Knows Best.
Hi friends, welcome back to Brenna Knows Best. I'm your host, Brenna Berg. Hi, how are you guys? Happy Monday. I am so excited for today's episode. We're going to break down all of my long-term relationships, which are 3, counting Carter, okay? We're going to dive into them. I'm going to tell you the nitty gritty of each of these relationships, who I was dating, not who, but like the, where they came from, what I learned, just my whole past, which I never think about. And honestly, as I was driving back, I grabbed groceries this morning and I dropped Carter off at school. Obviously, I was just like trying to recollect because there's so many things I'm sure I'm going to forget. And I did not pre-plan this episode. I always have like a loose plan. This is like free for all because somebody questioned me in a live. They said, can you talk about long-term relationships? And I just want to open the floor. And you guys know me. I love to just chit chat. But first, let's talk about the week, even though I'm recording this early because I'm home. When you guys are listening to this, I'm going to be in North Dakota, which I sound really excited right now. Only because I'm so excited to see my family. And you guys, I get to see my cousin Lauren, who, if you guys have a cousin who's a girl that's like a sister to you, you get it. Like our bond, even though I don't talk to her nearly as much anymore. She has 3 children at this point. It's so funny how when you're kids, like she was 4 years older than me, we were like sisters. And then all of a sudden our lives could not be more different. Like I live in Dallas, Texas in a big city. She lives in a tiny town on a bunch of land, has horses and cows and 3 kids, and it's crazy, but I'm so excited to see her, and I'm so excited to see LaDonna and Gordy. I called my dad yesterday and I was like, hey dad, I'm coming home. Can you pick me up at the airport at 10:30, which we'd already talked about on Father's Day? And he's like, of course. And then I asked him, I'm like, do you have a vehicle I can use? Because my father is a mechanic, right? Not on his day-to-day job, but he's a race car driver. Actually, not anymore. Did I tell you guys? He's done racing. Oh my gosh. Which to you means nothing, but my dad has been racing cars since he was like 20 years old, like probably 30 years at this point. Street stock, dirt track car racing. And last year, you guys remember, Carter and I went to a race, and I put this in an Instagram Tuesday where my dad flipped. It was actually very scary. It always scares me, even though I know he's so secure. It's just like, oh my gosh, knowing that my dad's in a car that's like flipping and flipping is just like so anxiety inducing. And that was like the last, I think, race my dad raced. It was in August, which typically the races end in August, but I think they couldn't get the car back up and going for like the next race. And I think that might have been the last race. Well, my dad told me when he came here, or maybe when I went home, that they discontinued his style of car at the racetrack he races at in Mandan, like the street stocks. They must not have enough people that do it or something. And so they just are getting rid of his class of car, and that's it. And honestly, I haven't talked to him much about it, but I'm sure that's so sad, which him and my grandpa work on the race car. Like that has always been the case. For example, when I was a kid in the summertime, my dad raised me. We spent so much time at the shop. Me and my brother just sitting there, like trying to find bumfuck to do. We would like take the rolly chairs across the shop and like run because my grandfather owned an auto body shop. It was called A&G Auto Mart in Bismarck, and it was Al and Gordy. A&G, and Gordy is obviously my grandpa, and he owned like an auto body shop for his whole career, a good chunk of his career, I think, after he came home he didn't go to war. But anyways, I'm getting too far into this. And so they would fix a race car there, and we spent so much time there while they would fix on the race car. But I say that because my grandpa obviously just broke his hip. So honestly, it's probably a blessing because I think my grandpa's probably getting too old to work on the race car. Even prior to the hip injury, he has COPD from smoking cigarettes. I think that's what it was caused from, and has a hard time breathing. He turns 80 this year, which is also crazy. Sorry, I'm just like reminiscing, and you guys are reminiscing with me right now, but anyways, my dad's done racing, and he's done that. Like my childhood, every Friday night we were at the racetrack in the summertime. And on Saturdays we would drive to Jamestown, which is like an hour and a half away, and race Saturday nights, and we drive back in the middle of the night. Like every single Friday and Saturday night of my life as a kid growing up in the summertime, racetrack. Like that is my childhood. And then the other days of the week, we were at the shop fixing the car. Oh my gosh. However, I call my dad and I said, hey, do you have a car for me? Back to my original point. He said, oh my gosh, I will not forget this. So he's a mechanic and my dad buys only older cars. Like I'm talking early 2000, late 90s, just random cars. Like I've had Monte Carlos and Bonnevilles, and he has this Tahoe and what else? Just random Buicks and things. Okay, my dad has never bought a car newer than I think 2005. Like he can fix cars, so he would rather just, for example, the Tahoe that I drive, you guys, well, I don't drive it and she's still not starting. I haven't even went down there to try. But my 2002 Tahoe that I've driven, I drove it down to Texas in 2019 when I came, and I've had it ever since. There's been minor issues. He bought that car for $1,000. He bought the Tahoe for $1,000, which is nothing, but it didn't work at the time. And then he fixed it. And then we've put thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. Like we drove from North Dakota to Buffalo, New York once in that Tahoe. That's the reason I think we bought it in the first place. But anywho, so my dad is the king of like, he has a fuck ton of cars, like at the house, in random shops of people that he knows. None of them work, right? None of them work. Okay. And the cars that he drives on the day to day, like half work, you know, something he's like, oh, I have to fill the tire in this car every fucking day. I'm like, why do you live like that? Why do you live like that? He tried once to give me a car in college after mine had broken down, because he would just like give me random cars. And he's like, you got to fill the tire every day. It is the middle of winter, negative degrees. Not only does that deplete the air in the tire just as is, I'm not getting out in the fucking cold. The very first day I get out to my car, dead, empty. The tire flat as fuck. I remember my friend Hannah, she was my roommate at the time. She came from like a bougier family. She was driving like a Yukon at the time, like a brand new. She was like, you can just take it, because she lived walking distance to her campus and I lived across at a different town across the river, Moorhead, Fargo, anywho. And so she like borrowed me her Yukon. I was like, oh my gosh, mommy, dad, I can't live like this. I can't live like this. So that's my dad. So I'm like, hey dad, do you have a car for me? He goes, yeah, I'm sure I can get one of the Bonnevilles up and running for you. And it took me a second to process. I'm like, wait, because I thought he was going to say, yeah, I'll get one of the Bonnevilles running for me. That way, like him, that way I, Brenna, can drive the Tahoe. But then he said for you. And I'm like processing that he's going to give me a fucking car that doesn't work. And then he starts laughing. I said, dad, that actually was not funny at all. I'm like, I'm not driving a fucking car that I'm going to have to like beat the shit out of. Oh my gosh. One time in college, you guys, I was driving a Saturn Vue, which I'm pretty sure my brother drives now and has driven for a really long time. Wait, was this the Saturn Vue? No, I think it was a different Bonneville. My dad also specializes in getting the same cars. So like when he got this Tahoe that I brought down here, after I left, he got another Tahoe, like a 2003, I think. And then he has a Bonneville that works, and then he'll get an old Bonneville. That way, if something breaks on this one, he has parts from a different one. So like I've been in multiple Monte Carlos. I've driven multiple Bonnevilles. Okay, you're following? I went to college and I don't remember, I think it was a Bonneville. I had to, the air conditioning, or the heat more so. You don't fucking need air conditioning in North Dakota. The heater, the fans weren't blowing. So the heating system itself was working. I'm sorry, I talk cars because this was my whole goddamn life growing up. But the fans weren't blowing. But like I would drive and I would hit a bump, or they would be blowing, and then I would hit like a bump in the road and then they would be out. Like something in there was finicky. So I would have to hit the shit out of the glove compartment, like down below. I would like bang it to get the heat going. You guys, it's like negative degrees. I can't drive. The heat's going. I mean, I can, but it would like fog up. It was a whole thing. And then finally I thought to myself, I had my ice scraper, obviously, and then I used that and I would just smack the shit out of this thing. One time I was trying to leave work and it was not going, and I needed it to defrost my windows. I got into the passenger side. I'm kicking the thing. I broke so much shit. My dad was like, could you take it easy? I'm like, Dad, it doesn't work. What do you expect me to do? I'm a fucking 20-year-old girl who just wants a car that like works, that I don't have like issues with constantly. Okay, so when he said, I'll get a Bonneville up and running for you, I said, nope, no, I'm not doing that. And then he laughed and he was like, oh, you can drive the Tahoe because they're going to take Pam's vehicle down to the reunion or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but am I going to leave her stranded once you guys get back? Because that's when I'll be out of town. And he's like, nope, I have a Bonneville. Like, I'll just use that. He'll fucking figure it out. I don't give a damn. But he said, oh, just so you know, with the Tahoe, he's like, it's been having issues. Like when you first turn it on and you put it into drive, it's not, I think there's a sensor issue. So it's not picking up that it's in drive. So it like might be in neutral. And so it takes a while to like get going because it's not really processing super quickly. But he's like, once you get going, it's fine. And I'm like, am I going to be fucking stranded on the middle of a road? Like, Dad, for real? And he's like, no, it's totally fine. And you guys, to you, this might be like, Brenna, don't drive that car. I haven't told Carter because he'd be freaking out. But knowing my father and the cars that he's made me drive in the past, I know what he means and I know it's fine. I know it's fine. So I have a Tahoe. Apparently it's going to be a little finicky at first, wait, can I tell you another story? I really didn't expect to have so much to say, but I drove a vehicle, again, I don't know which one it was, a Lumina, and I pulled out of our driveway, which was like kind of a downward slope, okay? And I actually parked not in the driveway itself, but in this little lot that we have next to it in like the fucking dirt. And so there was a lip where the curve or the curb is. So I remember I started the car, okay, whatever car I was driving at the time, and I went to go in reverse and like I barely touched the gas and I like not flew back, but like a noticeable jolt. Okay, nothing crazy, but I was like, oh, did I just like press on the gas a little bit more than I typically do? And then I put it in drive and I was going, and we live on a street in a town called Lincoln that the speed limit is 15 miles per hour. You could literally walk faster than that. It's like so slow. If you've ever driven under 15 miles per hour, and we just like have to go through a couple streets to like get out onto a main road. Well, I remember I like pulled onto the road and of course like I step on the gas, but it felt funny. I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? I turn onto a main road, which was like a 35 mile per hour speed limit. One time I was going 55 on it, got a goddamn ticket, but I pull on there and I'm like, wait, what is going on? I think it's accelerating without me even hitting the gas pedal. Okay. So then I get onto Lincoln Road and I'm like, I'm just like not going to hit the gas, right? I'm like, let's see. This thing is accelerating. I am not touching the gas and it's going, which is not funny. And I know that I have to monitor what I say because I was going to my mom's house, which is like not even a 5-minute drive from my dad's house. They both live on the outskirts outside of town. And I got up to like 55 miles per hour, not quickly, like it definitely slowly rode. So it wasn't that scary. And obviously the brakes worked, thankfully. But I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So then of course the whole way over to my mom's, I'm like not stepping on the gas. And I was going like really slow at the beginning, but it would go faster. I'm like, something's fucked up. And I get to my mom's house and I tell her, and of course, like my parents were divorced. She's like pissed at my dad for like putting me in a car that doesn't work. She didn't say anything. She was like only bitched to me about it, but I'm like, Mom, it's fine. And of course, like she's not used to like the car situations that I've had to deal with. But as a mom, good on her for like wanting me safe. But later that day, I'm like, Dad, this thing is accelerating. And he asked me, he's like, is something stuck? You know, like is the floor mat like stuck and it's like pushing it? There's nothing. I don't know. He ended up fixing it. But that is my go around with cars. There have been so many things. One time my brother and I went and played tennis. It was a midnight because they had the lights. We were out really late playing. On the way home, me and my brother pull up to a light. Okay, there's nobody out. We're in front of the airport, right? And once this light goes green, we're going to race. So I pulled up next to him. We're the only people on this goddamn street. And we're staring at each other. And I'm like, oh, fuck, let's go. He was driving his Lumina. I was driving a Monte Carlo and they look identical. But as soon as that hit green, I step on it, right? I'm going and I look in my rearview mirror. I'm like, oh my God, he's not even fucking trying. He's like way in the dust. And all of the sudden I'm laughing, right? I'm giddy as fuck. I'm having the best day of my life. I just beat the shit out of my brother in a race. He's calling me. He's like, hey, bitch. He didn't say that because he would never say that to me, but that's how I talk. He said, hey, bitch. My car just stopped. His car just done. Didn't even get going. It's gonzo, right? And make a U-turn and I drive back to him and he's sitting there and he's frustrated. And I think he might have been in college at this point. He probably came home for the summer and that's why it was so fun because we got time together again. But we knew our dad would be sleeping. And at this point he lived at Pam's house. Oh yeah. So my brother was in college at this point. We really didn't want to bother him. Oh no. I lied. I bet this was the summer before my brother was leaving to college because this was the moment my dad started dating Pam. And for a while he didn't tell us, but we would hear him sneak out or come in really late. And like, we put the clues together. We're like, something fucking is going on. Like something's happening that we don't know about. We didn't know Pam. We knew Pam because she was my brother's like friend's mom growing up from a long time ago. Like we knew who she was, but at the time, like there was no correlation. Like we had no idea, but we knew that my dad must have been dating something or something was going on, right? So we did the U-turn. We get out. We start pushing my brother's car, just me and my brother. And we're like, oh fuck, are we going to call dad at midnight? He's gonna be so pissed. Like he has to work in the morning. Like he's not gonna be thrilled. But we're like, what do we do? And actually a car ended up driving by and a bunch of guys got out and also helped us drive. And then we parked it at this gas station right there. And I don't know why I didn't just drive him home and then we dealt with it the next day, but I think we just didn't want to leave it. So we texted or called my dad. And this is why I remember, because we made a bet on which direction he was going to come from. Because if he came from the left, he was coming from Lincoln. But if he came from the right, he was coming from town, which would have been from Pam's house or whoever he was seeing at the time. So we're like, where do you think he's coming from? And he came from home. I got it wrong. I was like, oh, for sure. He's fucking his girlfriend. Oh my God. I'm sorry, that's so vulgar. I would never actually say that, but I just like known that he had been, staying out late and doing the whole thing, but he came from home and I don't think I actually owed my brother any money, but my dad was not happy when he got there. And then that was the end of that car's life. Like it was donezo. Oh my gosh, another time, you guys, I am so sorry. I can shut the fuck up. One more story. I drove a car and apparently I was supposed to check the oil every fucking month. Again, another thing that I just shouldn't have to deal with. As a young high school girl, why was my dad expecting that of me? However, my dad and my brother went to go do something and I was at the house and they called me. The car that they were driving was mine at the time. It was under my care. When they were driving to wherever they were going, it died. Okay, apparently the oil was low or something because my dad yelled at me. He's like, why weren't you checking that? But I said, it didn't do that when I was driving. I think it's a you issue. I don't think he tried to blame me. I said, nope, I was not driving the vehicle when that happened. Oh my gosh, you guys, I wish you knew my family. And I think you could probably get an idea from the stories that I tell you. Oh, I love them. However, I have a vehicle. It's going to be a little finicky. But I do have like a 3-hour drive to get up to my cousin. So we'll see. I also have never told you guys that when I was young, my mom's side of the family, are a bunch of like musicians and like singers. Like I have yodelers. I have like just crazy. My mom knows how to play the piano. She's a really good singer. My cousin's a really good singer. So they just like assumed that I was. And I'm not going to say that I'm a bad singer, but I'm not like fucking Britney Spears, Shania Twain, which I wish. Okay, but while I was driving home today, I was listening to Shania. And if you guys don't know, I probably don't really talk about this. I'm like a country bitch just because that's what I grew up listening to. So I'm getting in the mood to get back home. And I was listening to Shania and I was singing. I was like, oh my gosh, the girls don't know that I used to sing like, this is really dumb. But when my mom got married to my stepdad, I was like 5, I think, 4 or 5. I sang From This Moment by Shania Twain in front of everybody at the wedding. The wedding was in our backyard. They built a gazebo and we have a huge yard. And I sat up there before the wedding and I sang no karaoke, top to bottom. Of course, at the beginning, I was like really shy at 5. And then like me and my cousin would sing at random things here and there. I don't know. People probably were like, these girls suck. But we still did it. From this moment... Life has begun from this moment. You are the one right beside you. Okay, obviously I was 5. Why was I singing that song? But it's near and dear to my heart. I just love Shania. Okay, now that I got all of that off my chest, yesterday I went to Target, and I wanted to make sure that Carter was set up for when I'm gone, not because he's incapable, but his studying, like now that we're 3 weeks away. Oh, by the time that you guys hear this, we're 2 weeks out from the bar exam. I just don't want him to have to like run to Costco or the grocery store while I'm gone. Like he's going to be so in his zone and dealing with May, not dealing, but like I do the day-to-day things around here, the laundry and all of that. So I wanted to make sure that like he wasn't running out of anything. So I knew we needed dishwasher stuff and toilet paper. So I go into the bathroom yesterday and I'm like, okay, let me make sure that all of his stuff is good. He has no body wash, or he's very low, his face wash, his hair gel, his deodorant, like everything that has ever been low or could be low was low. I spent like $130 at Target yesterday strictly on goods for Carter, other than dishwasher stuff. And then toilet paper, I got him hair gel, I got him deodorant, I got him face wash, I got him body wash. I'm like, damn. Then you guys, I go to Costco and I got just like a bunch of frozen stuff, like chicken nuggets, corn dogs, stuff that he can easily put in the oven and like do, because that's what we normally have anyways. But just, I had Carter in mind. I got him some Gushers because he likes a little sweet treat. I just got a bunch of stuff. I get up to the counter, right? And it's like a hefty bit of stuff. And the guy said, oh, your membership is up for renewal, $120. So it was $388 at Costco. I'm like, fuck. And now I just went to Central, which was like $100 just for tonight's meals and tomorrow. So today I'm filming, it's Tuesday. And then tomorrow I don't leave until like, we'll go to the airport at 6 p.m. or something. So I just wanted to make sure we had meals, and Carter wanted me to make him the chicken tortellini. So there was, leftovers for the next day, which is like so fresh. And I love that he wants that. Oh, I didn't tell you guys about my mental breakdown over the weekend. Oh my gosh. I mentioned this in my running vlog. I apologize. On last weekend, okay, number one, let's talk about TikTok. It wasn't posting any videos. That maybe you heard people talking about this, maybe you didn't. Any video over a minute, it would post, but then it just straight up said 0 views, which like, I don't give a fuck, but I just wanted to make sure I was getting content out, because obviously like for the people, that is like what I do. And I didn't look all day and it was frustrating me, and I had only posted a couple and it had been since the prior day. So my running vlog, which I've been trying to be super consistent about and good about, I wanted to chop it down to under a minute, because everything under a minute was posting. So it was Saturday night, I believe, and I was on there and I was editing it down, and it was like 5 p.m. And of course, immediately Carter's like, I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, not saying it to me, but he's like, how long is like dinner going to take? And it was a new beef stroganoff recipe, which I'm just trying to do different things to like learn, because I don't know shit about shit. Well, of course, like he's trying to get everything going while I'm doing something else. And I don't like him bothering me in the kitchen, like, especially when I'm trying to learn. Like, I need my time, I need my space. Like if I need help, I'll ask, but he ends up doing it all and then I'm not really learning. So that was stressing me out. We also had like a conversation that day about something else that was like a little bit emotional, just having to do with like family things. And then I started immediately, like I put the thing too high and it called for butter because I was searing the beef, smoke everywhere. I'm on the verge of tears immediately. And I'm just like so frustrated. And then of course he like jumps up, he starts helping. He's like, babe, it's totally okay. He's like, butter burns at this. And he's like explaining, he's like, let me just like start the meat, lift it. He's like teaching me all the things, which he's so great. And he's like, I'll just start getting like this stuff together. He's like, let me just make sure everything's in order. You keep doing the meat. Like he is so sweet and just understanding and loving. And he's just the best, you guys. But I'm like staring at the stove, like doing this, like about to cry at any minute. And especially when I'm emotional, if somebody says like they're proud of me or it's okay or don't worry about it, like that makes you like cry immediately. When like somebody consoles you and then it finally just comes out. Like he came around me, he gave me a hug, he like kissed me on the cheek. He's like, babe, like you're doing great. Like that was something you didn't know. Like there's nothing you can do about it. I'm just helping you gather the stuff, but like, we're good. Everything's good. And he's like so positive and uplifting to me. And I immediately just started like breaking down, and he's like, why are you crying? Like, what's wrong? And I was like, I was just stressed before, and I've just like been emotional. I was getting my period as well, which checks out, of course. And I'm like, and then I feel so incompetent. Like, cooking makes me feel so dumb because I'm not bad at it. Like, every meal I've made have been good. I mean, it's following a recipe, yes, but it's just like learning those odds and ends about like certain, the butter. Like, I didn't know, and what pans to use. Like, that stuff is just so foreign to me. And so I just feel so dumb. I'm like, I'm 27 years old and I don't know how to fucking cook. Like, oh. And I don't know. I like am just so hard on myself, but it was all okay. We made the beef stroganoff and it was delicious. It was actually so delicious, but now I'm like traumatized to make it again. But anyways, that was the week. Okay, let's get into long-term relationships. I blabbed long enough. Let's break it down. Let's talk about Brenna Berg's basically 2 partners that I dated, maybe a little bit of high school, and then just like learning different things, communication, all of that jazz. We're not gonna do like the book update and the product update just because it hasn't been that long since last week's. For me personally in filming, the only update I did finish Too Late by Colleen Hoover, loved it. And then You Guys Don't Believe It by Charlie Donnelly, I think is his name. Amazing. I posted about it on my story. If you like Freida McFadden, it was so good. Basically, this woman was convicted of murdering her boyfriend in St. Lucia. Okay. And there was a woman who like creates documentaries that went to like just, unravel the truth because this woman had said she was innocent the whole time. And basically that's the premise. So it just like goes through like the investigation and what they found. So if you like that sort of like murder mystery sort of situation, amazing. Okay, let's get into long-term relationships. I first want to define a long-term relationship to myself. Me personally, I think a long-term relationship is anything over a year. Okay, and of course, like if it's 11 months, like sure, we can qualify that. It's honestly whatever you think is long-term is a long-term relationship. I don't know if there's an exact definition, but that's like how I view it. So when I talk about these things, I'm thinking anything over a year, which I say that because I feel like a year is a good amount of time to know somebody and be with somebody and go through things and really get past like the honeymoon stage. Of course, it's different for everybody. That could take longer or shorter or whatever. But that's what I'm considering long term. So let's talk about Brenna in high school. Brenna had like one boyfriend, maybe freshman or sophomore year. And then my senior year, I dated a boy who lived in a separate town for like the school year. So like 8 months or something. And again, now as a 27-year-old, I'm like, that relationship was so fake. Like that was nothing, but not to discredit, because I think any relationship, long-term, short, situationship, I think you learn about yourself, you learn about guys, you learn about relationships, you learn communication on different things. Nothing should be discredited because that's when my like journey started with like dating and things, of course. So in high school, it's just, you really have nothing to like worry about. Like your fights and your arguments are like jealousy and insecurity based, I feel. Like you're around a bunch of kids, like you don't deal with bills. Like, what do you have to fucking worry about or think about? You know what I mean? Like if you're in your 20s, you'll understand. But I will say, like starting out those conversations, like what is okay on social media, because Instagram was around when I was in high school. It had just started, I think, recently at that time. And Snapchat came out while I was in high school. So like navigating those things, I think all of it, you're learning. But basically, that guy lived in a different town, so we only saw each other too, like every other weekend. He was like an hour and a half away. But I will say, I had seen that guy, my situationship. I guess let's add that to the mix. We'll call him Jim. Jim and I started talking, I think, like my junior year. That went to freshman year of college. So that was like 3 years, but that was on and off. And we'll consider that my toxic relationship, okay? Which again is beneficial, taught me a lot. It taught me what I did not want. But starting off strong in high school, this boy that I dated my senior year, God bless his heart, and I loved his fucking family. Oh my God. He had twin sisters. They were all in the same grade. Even though I think he was younger, they ended up in the same grade. So like the two girls, oh my God, they were amazing. And honestly, his family kept me in it way longer than I wanted to be. Like I loved going up there and visiting them and hanging out because it was his mom, stepdad, and then they were still like close with his real dad, and then the twins and him. So like it was just like a big hangout. They were super fun. I remember we went to 50 Shades of Grey, like me, him, his whole family. And then I remember sitting in the theater and we were in the front row and like some people were behind us, but his mom leans in and she's like, don't get any ideas, you two. Like she was hilarious. And you know, when you're in high school, it's like awkward. Like you're not even, oh my gosh. There's so many things that I didn't even think about, being comfortable in your own body. Like that whole navigating like new sexual experiences. Like again, you're learning so much in this time. But anyways, loved his fam. And what I was going to say is that he was obsessed with me in the best way, like not in an unhealthy way, but every time he would come, like he's bringing the coffee, he's like doing all of like those stupid, like whatever, when you're in high school, you think are like so cute and romantic, which was great. And he was like literally obsessed with me, like posted me on social media all the time, did this. Like I never had to think twice about like really jealousy. I'm sure I still had it because when you're younger, or just, I think it depends on when you start relationships. For example, something I thought about on my drive this morning when I was thinking about the episode is I had a friend here in Dallas a couple years ago, and she was a sweet, sweet girl, but she was 27 or 28, entering into her first ever relationship, losing her virginity to this man, okay, at 27, which no shame or anything, but it was so clear, like the things that she would talk to me about in this relationship were like things I personally dealt with in high school and college, because that's when my relationship started. Like, for example, he followed a fuck ton of Instagram models, a fuck ton, and like would like all of their photos, and it made her feel really insecure. And she had that kind of insecurity and rage because like she'd never been in a relationship, and I don't think she was super confident. I also think being in relationships can make you more confident, because in relationships you learn so much about yourself, not just in the sense of a relationship, but individually. And she was just very stunted. She had a parent who I think had like a chronic illness or something, so she waited to go to college until later, or maybe didn't even go to college. She was like taking care of her parent, which is amazing. And she's so sweet, but it really did stunt her growth in some ways. Again, I'm just like being so honest. And she would talk to me, and you guys, she was the inspiration for my TikTok, because I would tell her, I'm like, girl, that's like not okay. And the problem is not the liking of the photos and the following. You guys have heard me say this a million times. It's the fact that you are expressing to him that you don't like that, and he's still doing it. But here's another thing. When it started happening, she didn't say anything for so long. She just kept it in because she felt crazy and didn't want to scare him away. And I think when you start in relationships, this is something you learn. Like in my early relationships, you so badly want to just keep them for whatever reason. Obviously, you want it to work. Like you like this person or love this person, but you don't speak up in your first. I feel like maybe some people start out. Again, this is all individual. I'm talking about my experience and from talking to girls. I just think in those early relationships, you hold everything in because you don't want to be crazy and you don't want to scare them away. But then you're the one suffering when you could just talk about it. So I remember her figuring this out, doing the whole creeping like I used to do way back in the day. But she's like 27, which is fine, not to like shame the age, but I'm just saying, I think because she had never had a relationship, she was going through things that I went through a really long time ago and learned, like, no, speak up. Like you have to speak up. But she was so scared, which I get. Like we all learn at our own paces, obviously. And then they had issues with like quality time. Like her love language was quality time. And to him, he said that, but their ideas of quality time were different. Like he wanted them to be around his friends all the time. Like to him, quality time was like spending time with his friends, whereas her, it was like them two doing things. And again, nobody is right or wrong, but the fact that they weren't on the same page is the problem. And she's like, we had these same conversations. Or again, she wouldn't have these conversations and she would have to drink. She's like, they drank all the time together, but that was the only time she could open up. And I'm just like, oh, like it's so textbook. Like I've been there. I get it. This is how I was with Jim, my situationship. Like I never wanted to ruin it and I never wanted to scare him away, even though he wasn't mine to begin with, even though we were never actually dating. But like, I don't know what it is. And finally you learn. So my high school boyfriend, Presh, was obsessed with me. We were going to college and I knew it wasn't like a forever thing. So I broke up with him and I said, I'm sorry. And it was hard. And I remember he cried. Oh my God, you guys, the amount of boys that I've made cry, even just like little situationships. Not that it's a flex, but like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's a flex. I'm just like, oh, but I think you guys should know. So I remember him crying. And then of course, like the family, like trying to break up from them. Like I loved them and I wasn't quite mature enough to do that. So like I remember hanging out with his sisters, going up there once, even though I knew he was there. Like so dumb, but what? I was 17, 18 years old. But we were going to college and I was like, no, not gonna, like, we're just not. He was going to a different college, I think, and it just was never that serious. So then I go to college, I'm still in this like situationship, and that, honestly, you guys, that taught me exactly how I don't want to feel and how I don't want to be treated. Like, I don't know how I thought, wow, if this turns into a relationship, what a great thing. But it was never going to turn into a relationship. So it all worked out. And I think everything really happens for a reason. If you're in a situationship right now and he's just stringing you along, like either you're finally going to get sick of the shit or it's just never going to turn out how you want it to. But then the end of beginning of my sophomore year. Okay. So freshman year of college, I was seeing that guy, my situationship, dating on and off with like random people, just like having fun freshman year, you know, living my best life. Start of my sophomore year or the fall time, I met my next or my first, I would consider long-term boyfriend. We'll call him Shane. Okay. Shane was a gem. All of my boyfriends, you guys, I have nothing bad to say about any of them. Okay. They were all great to me. And I'm so thankful that it led me here to today. Like all in all, you know, if you're going through a heartbreak or going through something that's like super hard, it's all preparing you and leading you to where you want to go. And I know when you're in it, it's so hard, but I met Shane. Okay. Let's get back on track. Sophomore year, fall time. He was a friend of this guy that I worked with. And we ended up all going to a concert, like a group of friends. And I hadn't known him. He had come into my work like once or twice and he was super cute. And I was like, okay, love. And then we hung out at this concert and then it just like blossomed from there. He, however, was raised by two alcoholic parents. Okay. So he had a very like turbulent childhood. And then his dad actually was like on and off again homeless. Okay. In our city. So like, I remember while we dated, we would see his dad like literally on the street. Oh my God. That like makes me so sad. But so like came from a very like dysfunctional household. Okay. His mom is now recovered. And while we were together but she lived like 5 hours away. So he was very independent like myself, which I think really drew us together. Because even though my family loves me and it's a little bit more stable household than he came from, like I'm still very independent and like have those sort of characteristics from like a not normal household, if you know what I'm saying. So I think that really bonded us. And he lived at a house with a guy. They were roommates. The guy that lived there owned the house. So he rented from him. However, my one issue with him at the time was in high school, he was a stoner. Okay. And that shit just gives me the ick. Like I've never done drugs, you guys, in my life. I have barely ever been a drinker. Like even in college, I wasn't a big drinker. And he had quit smoking like the summer before I met him. So he didn't anymore, but I knew that was a part of his past. And I could tell because his friends were stoners. And one of our biggest arguments and like issues was we would go to this house and these people were just like, all they wanted to do was like drink and get high. And to me, it just like every time I'm like, I hated being there. They were nice people, but I couldn't be more different. And like, I wanted to like go places and do things. And the problem with him was that he was like, you know, raised in this super turbulent household. And was going to college, but like didn't really know what he was doing. And I'm like, one foul or like not foul, one like misstep or like getting back into that, like he would just be a stoner. You know, in my head, that was it. And I really was trying to like help him. He wanted to go to chiropractor school. I'm like, perfect. Like, okay, let's finish undergrad. And then we went and toured. So, okay, I'm getting so far ahead of myself and I don't know why I'm just like explaining all of this, but we dated then the winter time. I think it started of my sophomore year. We dated then all of sophomore year, junior year, the start of senior year. So 2+ years, we broke up when I moved to Dallas, and we'll get into that. But basically, I want to talk about the nitty gritty because the conversations in this relationship, we both paid rent. Like this was like more at the time you think you're adult, but like you really still have no obligations. You're in school. I was working, but it's not like a real job. And we didn't live together or anything at any point in the relationship. So it's not like we had any sort of discussions about our finances and like stuff like that. But again, I think there was still some like insecurity, the jealousy situations for both sides. So like working through your emotions with like going out to parties in college and like, you know, stupid shit happens. Like they talk to a girl for so long and you're like, who's that? Or the social media. So like working through all of those things during that time period is something that I learned. But again, this boyfriend loved me, obsessed. Like there was never any cheating, never any weird situations like that. Just like, I don't even know what we didn't really argue, I don't think. Like we didn't have any issues because we weren't like dealing with real life things. But anyways, he lived at this house and then I bounced around during this time period from different place to different place. But overall great. We were serious. Like, I mean, as serious as you can be in college again, before I was going to Dallas. So I don't even remember how. I think my problem in this was I've always known that I could not settle and I would not settle in a relationship. Like I had such high hopes for myself and I wanted to get out of North Dakota. I wanted to live in a big city. Like I was not about to be held back by anyone or anything. So as I'm remembering this, I don't remember it in the time or like what was going through my head at the time, but the internship that I came here for, that was during the school semester. I've talked about that before, but I was interviewing for places all over. And I don't know, I was still very much like we had been together when I was interviewing for these almost 2 years at that point. So I was like, I'll just go for 4 months. And when I finally landed on Dallas, I was like, I'll go, we'll be fine. I'll come back and then we'll either move to Minneapolis because he really liked being up north. He was a hockey player. The chiropractic school that we had toured was in Minneapolis, and that was still like, it was kind of like an on again, off again thing, you know, like he wasn't sure because it would put him in a lot of debt and he had no funds coming from anybody but himself. He worked at Pepsi our whole relationship, like part-time, almost full-time, depending on what his class schedule was. But anyways, so we were going to stay together. That's what we thought. And the first week I came down to Dallas, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to leave. And then it started to hit me that he was not the one. Like I started doubting us. And the problem that I knew was that if I told him I wanted to stay in Dallas, like he would move down there. Like we had talked about prior, you know, whether when I come back, like we would move in together, wherever that be, if we had to stay in Fargo for a little bit or go to Minneapolis. I knew that if I told him I wanted to stay, that he would come. Like he was in it with me for the long haul, but in my head, like that thought was freaking me out and I just didn't want that anymore. And I had this feeling inside of me, which I get questions all the time on breaking up with somebody. You think about it for so long. Like, and I was in a different city, so I wasn't around him. We were chit-chatting, but I slowly every day had this like guilt and this doom. And I was so emotional because I knew that something wasn't right. But we had been together 2 years and I knew that he would be very upset. So I went back home in like February. and we ended things because I didn't want to give him even the idea, because I knew if we talked about it, he'd be like, I'll move, but I just didn't want that. And it was hard, but I got this question. Somebody asked me, like, how do you know to trust? Like, is it normal to question if this person is the one? Somebody asked me that. And I think number one, you need to take into account your age. Like, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, I think number one, it's good to question things. And I think that's so normal at any stage. I think it is very normal to evaluate and question, because it is the biggest decision of your life, who you want to marry, who you want to be with. I think there's a difference between like questioning yourself and your life and like whatever, and a difference between like worrying. And if there's like things that he does and you're like, oh, like if he makes you feel a weird way, like those are two different things. Questioning your life's purpose and like that sort of thing is normal, and not being sure about, I'm not really making any sense. Like, I don't even know how to say it. But some people, you know, on one hand, like build up the one and they expect it to be perfect. And so when there's one minor issue, you're like, is this the one? Like that, I don't think it's not normal, but I think you need to decipher where it's coming from. Like, are you unfulfilled in the relationship, or are you just like, let's say, going between careers right now? So like everything's up in the air. So then you start questioning your relationship, because I feel like that's normal. But I had this, you know, month of like stewing and thinking about it, and deep down, you know, and I think you know when you're unfulfilled and you're meant for more. But I ended that relationship. So beginning of 2019, when I first moved to Dallas. So that was like my first, what I consider like real relationship. It was great. Again, it was never toxic. There was never any like huge fights. Like we barely fought, I think. And on one hand, like fights are good for a relationship, or just like disagreements and, you know, talking through things. But on the other hand, like it's not that we weren't fighting because we weren't speaking up, you know, like we had little bicker in like moments, but we really just like on a fundamental level, we're two easygoing people and got along. Okay. So that was that relationship. I also want to note, like, people ask me about getting into relationships. Some of you listening have never been in a long-term relationship, and commitment with the right person is easy. Like in every single one of my long-term relationships, commitment was not hard. Like with the right person, it's easy. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be things that you deal with. And depending on your age, like again, if you're in college, you're not really dealing with like real life things, I feel, because you don't have a full-time job. And like, I don't know, that's so unfair to say because everybody is different, but do you get what I mean? And getting into a relationship, somebody asked me like, nobody wants to get into relationships. They just want to hook up, or like, how do I even get into a relationship? Number one, you just need to be dating, which we obviously talk about a lot on this page. And I think being patient is number one. Do not rush into it. And is the reason you want a relationship because like you're ready and you just want to experience that for the first time? Or do you feel like pressured to get into one? Or do you feel like by now you should be in one? Because that's not a good reason to get into a relationship. But I think if you're just actively dating and going on dates, like the person will come along and it'll be so worth the wait. But again, you can sit here and want a relationship. So then the first date you go and you're like, I want this guy to want a relationship with me. And you can like shake them and try and make them be in a relationship. But I think as long as you're coming from a place of like patience and just openness and wanting that, like you will meet a guy that wants a long-term relationship as well. And it'll happen like pretty organically. I think if there's a lot of stress involved, if you're like, what's he thinking? Or why isn't he asking me this? Or whatever, that is not a good thing. Like that is bad vibes. I think when it's a good person who wants a relationship and is interested in you, it will go seamlessly. So I know it's hard if you've been going on dates and been single for a long time and you really want it, but obviously it takes two people that are open and willing, and you're there. Now it's just like finding or meeting the guy who wants a long-term relationship as well. Okay, you guys, this episode might be super long because I keep thinking of different things. Sex. Okay, sex in a relationship is so important. And the thing with long-term relationships that I feel is super helpful for having sex and learning about yourself is that you are so comfortable with that person, or more comfortable with a person you've been with for a long time versus like a short-term hookup or a situationship. And that is also when you can finally learn like the things you like in the bedroom and just like all of that, and self-exploration, and also getting comfortable with your body. I feel like it was in my first relationship, that relationship I was just talking about in college, where I finally was like confident in my body. And I think my partner helped that. I think like being with the wrong person can make you feel insecure. And if they make comments about your body or certain things during sex, like that can totally change your relationship with sex in general. But that relationship was really great for me. Number one, feel confident and comfortable in my skin and like learn different things. And I obviously don't remember, I mean, other than the sex I have with Carter, like I don't even think about anything else, obviously. So like I don't remember exactly, but I'm just saying in terms of long-term relationships, I think they can be very good for sex and learning about yourself in that realm. And same with anything. I think if you've only ever been in situationships, like communication, you're gonna have, like, let's say you're in a situationship for 3 months and then another one and then another one. You're kind of having the same conversations and same issues. It's then when you get into longer relationships, like you start dealing with interpersonal, like family situations and finances and like bigger topics. Whereas when you only date people for a short period of time, and I'm not, again, I hope this never comes off like I'm not trying to shame anybody who's been in a short-term relationship, but I'm just talking about the benefits and things that long-term relationships teach you that a short-term relationship won't. So that's why also your first long-term relationship is a huge learning experience, because you've probably never had any of these conversations with anybody else. Like there are certain things you talk about with your friends, but like with a partner, it is so different. Even family. Like for example, when I talk to my friends about, you know, like my mom's being whatever about this situation, when you talk to your partner, well, number one, I would hope that they would offer solutions and they see it from a different light, and they also have your back, and they are experiencing these things with you now. And we'll get into that with Carter. Okay, I really need to jump along. So then my next boyfriend, I moved to Dallas beginning of January. We broke up like January, February. And then I was single that year. I met my next boyfriend that November. Okay. So 8 months I was single. I was like doing the whole dating in a new city. That was super fun. And then I met, and I guess actually, I take that back. This is like my first real, what I considered like adult relationship, but even still, now that I've been with Carter, it's so different. And I'm like, none of them were real. Like they were all fake as fuck. Because the thing with both of my boyfriends prior to Carter is that they both, I think, didn't have a strong sense of self. And I think while I was in the relationship, I really liked that. Not that I could pinpoint that, but they loved me so much and treated me so well, and they would do anything for me, and everything that I said went. Like they didn't have their own super strong opinions or direction. Like I felt in those two relationships, the one I'm about to talk to and the one in college, I was leading the relationship, which is like cute and fun and dandy while you're in it. I'm like, this is great. Like they just do what I say and we never have issues and they never start fights because like I'm always right and yada yada. But like that's not helpful. That was honestly like the downfall of the relationships, especially this next one. So I met the next boyfriend on Tinder actually, and we immediately went on a date at Kitty I's house, and then we just went from there. It was super easy. Again, super great person, like no ill will towards any of them, and they all treated me great. So this boyfriend now, this was like a 180. His parents are super well off. Like his dad has his own law firm, and we would go and visit them. They have this insane house, and they actually built a house while I was with them on the country club. And the boyfriend, okay, my boyfriend at the time, was trying to be a professional golfer. So this is also why this relationship was like so fake, because we met in November. We started dating like December, January officially. And then March was COVID. So the world shut down. I was working full time for my real estate job. I just started it. But my boyfriend at the time, like he was a full-time professional golfer. So like he treated it like a 9 to 5. Like he was at the golf course all day long. But again, there was like so many variables. Like if he didn't want to go in one day, he didn't have to, and like didn't have to worry about anything, because while we were together, we toured houses, and then his parents bought him a house, okay, for him and his brother. And then it was a 4-bedroom house, and they got 2 other golfers to live there. So, but again, my boyfriend wasn't paying rent. He has been financially supported by his parents his entire life. If he needs anything, they've got him, right? He has a huge trust, okay, when he, turns 30. And like, there was so many things that, number one, were so new to me, because for me, like, I take care of my own bills. Like, my parents have never helped me, in terms of the guy I dated before, like, he was in a similar standpoint to me. This was completely different. And obviously I'm like, woo, like, great. Like, in my eyes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm set. Like, this is amazing, which probably played into just reasons why I was there. Like, obviously when you're with somebody, you love them and you care about them. And I was in it obviously because I really enjoyed and like loved this person, but there are other things obviously that looked good to me. Hello, the security of it. Like, that was incredible. And so we dated all of 2020, and we broke up and then got back together. So we broke up in January, and here was the main issue. He deals with or dealt with mental health issues badly, and his parents never really treated it as a serious issue. So he was very alone in that. And it's not something that I understand. I've never had a mental illness. I know nothing about it. I'm as clear-brained as it gets. Like, I just know nothing about it and can't relate at all. I never get anxiety. Like, there's just like nothing that I can even understand. But I would see him go through like these episodes, and it was crazy and heartbreaking. And again, like, I was there. Like, I was like, okay, if you want to continue golfing, do that. Or like, if you want to go to law school and also become a lawyer, like, go do that. Like, I was like, again, who was I to say? And also I'm like, you have the funds, like, you can fall back on anything. Like, I could never understand how at the time, like, I'm like, what do you have to worry about? But each of us has our own struggles. And honestly, that relationship taught me that, like, even though he had this like miraculous family and like had the funds and all of that, like, there were issues within that. And like, it created this weird dynamic. Like, me and him never made any adult decisions together because he always had to consult with his parents. Like, they were funding his life, obviously. And there were pros and cons. Like, I loved his family. They were so kind. They always paid for my flights, and like, they were amazing. But there were like issues then within, because it never felt like a real adult relationship, because it wasn't. Like, until I met Carter, I had no idea. And this is especially why I'm passionate and why I'm so thankful that Carter came into my life. So, okay, let me just like wrap that up. So we dated a whole year, and then in January he had like a huge like mental breakdown, and then like it was like this whole thing, and then I got, thrown in the crosswind. So he initiated the breakup, and like, I was hurt. I was like so upset. Like, it came out of nowhere. Now looking back, I'm like, he didn't have a strong sense of self, and I was the one, again, leading the relationship, and like, he never had an opinion of his own. So there was never issues, but I think there's a lot going on underneath inside of him. Not with us. I think it was a lot of personal issues, but this is why they say you need to love yourself to like love somebody else. Like, he was just way too far gone, and out of nowhere it broke up, and I was distraught, and it was horrible. And then obviously I got through it. He reached out to me a month later, like, did the whole thing, tried to get back together. We hung out a couple times, and then I would like see that he's like, he got a Tinder notification. I'm like, okay, but like, what the fuck is that? Like, I'm not sitting here waiting around and you're just like doing whatever. So I broke it off. I remember him crying. I'm just like, what the fuck are we talking about? Okay. Then we were broken up for a year and a half. I was single for a year and a half, and then he reached out. So we broke up in January, the following like June, and just like a catch up. And he'd been going to therapy and like doing all of the things, and he was officially going to quit golf, which like was a lie, but like, whatever. We met up again. You fall right back in. Like, there were reasons we worked and we were good together and we had so much fun together, but like, again, it's so much deeper than that. So then we dated again until the next January. So like 6 months. So in total, our relationship was like a year and 6, 7, 8 months. And we broke apart just like the beginning. Like, he had this full on break. And then my social media, I had started that while I was in this relationship. So I started my social media like August and we had gotten back together in like June. So I remember confronting him about it and I knew he was going to hate it because his posh family and he has this image and he thinks he's going to be a professional golfer and like I'm saying, you know, shisty, feisty things on the internet. Like I knew, but he tried to be cool with it at first. He acted. He didn't even look at it. I'm like, perfect. Like it doesn't really matter. It's like this separate thing. And then of course, like when we broke up, like that was the reason, like it, you know, came to surface. But again, like it was way more than that. And so we broke up the beginning of January, and that relationship again, like taught me, you know, on one hand, there's just so many different individuals and like family, for example, like when I dated my boyfriend in college, I'm like, I think it'd be really nice to be part of like a great, wholesome, nice family with money, let's say. Then I got that and I'm like, oh, it's not all that it's cracked up to be because they control his whole entire life. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different things like that you see and you learn. And after I got out of that breakup, the second time we broke up was way easier because number one, I felt like I finally initiated because he was like giving me an ultimatum, like social media or him. And I said, okay, gotta go. I packed up all my shit and left. Again, the waterworks. But I was like, this is so fucking stupid. And it was like something we couldn't come back. Like I was too upset that he wasn't supportive and cared more about like his friends and family and what they thought. And again, at the time, that's all I knew. And I was like, oh, it's normal to consider your friends and family until I met Carter. And again, you guys, these relationships led me right to Carter and like what I know and what I've learned and why he is like the perfect partner for myself and all of like the little dates that I went on. If you haven't been in a long-term relationship, you could of course meet your person tomorrow and it's your first long-term relationship. I'm just saying that like I have learned so much about myself and relationships and what I want and what I thought I wanted and what I wouldn't put up with and what I would put up with. Like in those first two relationships, like for example, I just thought in some ways I would have to compromise. Like with the second boyfriend, it was like the mental health. I'm like, everything else is so great. It's just the fact that he's like mentally unwell and I'm going to have to deal with that for the rest of my life because it was like a neurological, like it's a real issue that he needed medication and therapy for that he wasn't getting at the time because his parents didn't believe it was a real thing. So I was like, that's what I'm dealing with. But like everything else is good. And I don't know what about my college boyfriend. Like I thought I was going to have to move somewhere I didn't want to be. And I was like, okay, I'm sacrificing location, but everything else is good. And then I met Carter and I have not once felt like I was sacrificing anything. And because I had been in those relationships and had so many conversations and knew myself, like our relationship has been so seamless. And not to say we haven't dealt with things. I am not going to dive into like personal matters because as much as I love to share and be transparent, a lot of it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with family, and that I'm never going to like expose anybody that has nothing to do with us. But me and Carter have had to set boundaries on our relationship with certain family members and things that we feel our boundaries have been crossed. And we together have had to come together and say, hey, like, let's say I'm not okay with this. And Carter's like, okay, perfect. Like I will have this conversation with this person. And in my last relationship, that would have never happened and never happened. Like the downfall of our relationship was the fact that he was like scared his family was going to see my social media and like couldn't support me. And now I have Carter and met Carter who on the third date, I brought up the social media. And you guys, I have a voice memo from him. And I remember I was just like, oh my gosh. Right after that third date, he was like, in the audio message, he was like, I want you to get yours. Like, if it's something you enjoy and it's something you're good at, like, that's amazing. And I support you and I will always support you. And like, that's amazing. He's like, I want you to get yours and I'll get mine and we'll be a team. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, Carter has never once, you guys, like seen my socials other than maybe if somebody pulled it up like very quickly. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. He supports me and he knows that like, number one, I enjoy doing this or whatever the heck I'm doing when I was nannying. Like he was fully in support of, you know, my weird schedule. Like that to me is like a true partnership. And again, like the issues with family, and I think this is a big thing for most people in relationships, is dealing with family and certain dynamics and how you are going to come together. And me and Carter, every single day, it's us. And like, I have never once questioned, like sometimes I'll have a nightmare where Carter's like agreeing with somebody else, and I'll wake up and I'm like, oh my God, how did I even think that was real? Because there has not been one single time where Carter has made me feel like anything that I'm saying or asking for is too much. He's like, yes, babe, like any rational person would feel this way, like totally get it. He's like, how can we figure this out together? And oh, what a dream. And this is what I want for all of you. And another thing that I feel, I just made a video on this about like fixing men and doing that whole shtick. Like, let's say I ended up with the first guy that I dated in college. I think we could we have gotten to a similar place? Sure. Like, there are some people, like you might meet your person and you both might be in your first relationship. So you work through those first like jealousy and insecurity things. And then you get to this phase where like you're weaning off of your family. Like a lot of people, you make decisions with your family, and it's a awkward stage in your early 20s. Like, your parents are still your parents, but you're also a full-blown adult that can make your own decisions. And I personally believe that when you are going to marry somebody, like that is your goal and you are close to that, like you are of course still a part of your family, but you guys are now a unit. It is your guys' decisions. Like, your parents should not have a single say in your relationship. Like, I think that's normal. And I think that's how our parents are or were, like for the most part. I think I see people that make decisions with their parents instead of their partner. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? Because at the end of the day, your partner is your person who you will be with hopefully forever. You guys are going to raise children together. Your parents aren't like, they raised you up until this point, and now you are an adult, and now you are looking for your partner to make decisions with. And I am so thankful that, number one, Carter has taught me that, which I've always been independent. You guys know that. So I've never made decisions with my parents. So that's why in my last relationship, it was, I never like shamed him, but it was, different to me because he had to talk to his parents about everything. And I'm like, why? Like, who gives a fuck? But then there's money and like things involved. So he had to. And I'm like, oh, I hate that. So like, even though like, let's say, I'm like, oh my gosh, so much money, security, amazing. I'm like, there is a downfall to that. And I think that Carter and I are in such a good place. Number one, like our finances and the fact that we don't rely on anybody else, and we're both very independent, and we both have lived individually and taken care of ourselves and then came together. And Carter has been in, same as me, 2 prior long-term relationships. I believe, honestly, like we don't spend a lot of time talking about them at all. And Carter especially hates it. So I never say anything. But from what I've gathered, just obviously from conversation and knowing his family and stuff, he's been in 2 like serious-ish long-term relationships. And I think, again, like that's amazing. And that led him right here. Like he learned things in those relationships and now is the wonderful human being that I get. But I guess this was just a blab fest of my previous relationships, but I think we can learn from one another. And I think that it's relatable. Like, I had a best friend who was in a long-term relationship at the end of college, and then they moved here to Dallas together. He wasn't from here, but he moved here for her, and they had been together like 3 years. And I remember she came to me and she was like, it's not right. Like, she had those sort of doubts, and then it manifested, and then she was crying. And it takes a while to build up. And of course, we all wish, like, if you knew that you were going to break up, you could do it immediately, but it takes some courage. And I remember sitting outside and sun tanning with her way back when, and she was like, I need to end this, and it's going to be hard because he had moved here for her. But this is what our 20s are for, and learning. But my biggest piece of advice is to not settle. Like, with every fiber in your being, like making sure that you don't settle and moving in together. You guys, a lot of people ask me, which I should do an entire episode on living together. I'll do that. If you guys ask a question, I'll kind of dive deeper. This is just like an overall, so you guys get an idea of my past and like where this is all coming from. But I talked about this on TikTok the other day, moving in together. Like, are you just sliding, I think is what they call it, into moving together? Like, did it just happen because you guys have been together for so long and you don't want to have two rents, but you never really had a conversation about it? Or is it like you guys are choosing and you're making a conscious effort and like this is happening and you've talked about it? I think not settling, because again, not only marrying the wrong person, like that's horrible, but even if you're in a 4-year long relationship with somebody that you're like, I don't know, like you are only taking time away from, like, you could be single and figuring things out. Like, we think of having a partner as this end all be all, which a lot of us want marriage and want kids. And I think that's beautiful and that's normal. And of course, like I want that now, like, hello. And it's easy for me to stay in a relationship, but we need to not take for granted, number one, our single era, because that is when I blossomed and learned so much about myself. And also, like, being single is oftentimes, all times, better than being in a relationship with the wrong person, but being too scared to leave. And if you are questioning whether this is the right person for you, I would like deeply reflect on what you want in life. Like, if you guys don't align, I think that's probably not a good sign. And if it's because of the way they treat you and you've asked them to do this and this and this and there's no change, like, I think you know yourself better than anyone. Like, I can't answer that question. Your parents can't. Like, you know what's best for you. And we're all just trying to make the best decisions for ourselves at the time. And that's all you can do. But if you are deeply unhappy and this person puts you down, or you feel you're not getting the same energy reciprocated, number one, I would obviously communicate, like talk to your partner. But if you have, and it's gotten to a point you're like, hello, we've had this conversation a million times, but nothing's gotten better. I'm not super happy. We're just kind of like coexisting. I would obviously like, make double extra sure and have those conversations with your partner. And maybe they're feeling a certain kind of way too, but you're never going to know if you don't communicate. And then taking the next steps to do what's best for you. Like, at the end of the day, you have to choose yourself and what's best for you, no matter how much you love somebody, no matter how much you know it could hurt them. Like, all you have in this life is yourself and your life. And if you spend all of that time doing things for other people or staying in something because you're scared of hurting them, or it's because it's what they want, that is no way to live. Okay, I'm going to go over a few questions really quickly and then we're going to end this. Sorry, this is a longer episode. I always get the question, how do you keep the spark alive? And this is a great question because I think obviously the spark, that is, I don't know, however you want to define that. The honeymoon phase is the honeymoon phase, right? You're happy, everything's great. Like, me and Carter now have been together a year and 3 months. And number one, a date every week is something, like, you hear it all the time. And I think it is important, and it doesn't need to be out. Like, if you don't even have any money, which me and Carter are trying to save right now, we cooked dinner the other night together and then we played games all night. Like, and day to day, I think to keep the spark alive, being intentional and actually talking to your partner and having real conversations. I think for a lot of us, especially if you move in together, you go to work, you come home, you eat, you watch something, you go to bed, and you barely even speak. You might do the like, hey, how was your day? And I know that as humans, we talk about the same things again and again. And it'd be so easy if like Carter brought up the debate for the 100th time to be like, babe, we've already talked about this. I never do that. Like, you never know where a conversation is going to lead. And if your partner is passionate about something and wants to talk about something, I think, of course, like, some days you're tired and whatever, but this is your person. And I think your relationship grows from communicating. If you're not communicating and like interacting every single day, I feel like you're going backwards. Like, you're just coexisting, and then it just slides into this place of like complacency, and then all of a sudden you don't have conversations, and now you never bring anything up because they've shot you down 100 times. Like, I think every single day being intentional, having conversation, like not being on your phone, not having any distractions is really important. And then whatever that looks like for you. Like, if you really deeply like going out and getting dressed up like for a date night, then make that a priority and say you need that. Like, that is important. And I think it can create spontaneity. spontaneous. You know the word I'm looking for. And also with that, somebody asked about sex and like, is it normal to not be as interested in sex in a long-term relationship? And I think it's normal to fall into this place of not having as much sex because again, now you're not as excited and you're not still doing the things and it's not as spontaneous. And like when you're first dating, like you're so attracted and you get to this place after months where like you go to work and now you're more familiar. So it's just a different thing, but you have to be intentional about sex as well. And sex is so important. You have to have sex. I will literally look at Carter and I'm like, can we have sex right now? Like, I don't care if it's not hot and in the moment and spontaneous. Like, I know that we need it or he needs it or I need it. So like, can we have sex? I'm naked. I'm on the bed. Hello. So I think, you know, like I get it getting to that place where like it's been a few days and you're like, oh my gosh, but you have to make an effort because sex in the relationship is so important. And like, even if you think so or not, like we've all had sex where you're like, you have it, you're not really there. It's not like the most passionate thing, but it still is connecting you guys. And I think it's still super important. We obviously try and have sex once a day. That is like our goal. So like if it's been 2 days, we're like, hello. If it's been 3 days, we're like, nope. Because it is really important just for connection. So I think, yeah, it's normal. People have fallen into places in my past relationships for sure. Like we would go days or like a week, let's say, because life, like you're just not in the same mode as you were when you first started. But I think it's really important and you should figure out together like what an ideal like amount is for you and like how you can go about that, you know? Okay, my boyfriend of 5 years doesn't want to move in together because he likes his space. Okay. Well, if you've been together 5 years, I would just have a real sit down conversation and be like, okay, number one, is marriage in the picture? And like, are we going to live together then? Because if he doesn't want to now and it's been 5 years, like you guys just got to get on the same page. Are you okay with that? That's a conversation that you two need to have ASAP because you're just going to keep wasting your time. When is he going to be okay with not like, I don't know. I would just have a conversation. Okay, last question. How do you move on from a long-term partner? Go listen to my breakup episode. You go no contact as hard as it is, and it just takes time. But you can either keep yourself stuck saying, this is my person, and oh no, and holding on, but you're only hurting yourself. Like if you guys broke up, it's not meant to be. Maybe not right now. Maybe you can get back together in the future. I wouldn't get your hopes set on that, but I'm just saying like if you broke up, that is what you need right now. Go no contact and it just takes time. And then I promise in like a month, 2 months, 3 months, like it'll all kind of start making sense. Just like I was talking about my relationships, like it all makes sense now when I was in it. I'm like, oh my God, we're perfect. Like we never fight. We never have issues. Like he loved me so much. I loved him, like cool and dandy, but there were obviously fundamental issues. So you just have to be strong and go no contact and cut that person off. Like it really is the only way in my opinion. And then it just takes time. Lean on your friends and family. Go listen to my breakup episode, just like anything, but be thankful that you got to be in a long-term relationship and you had love for that person and that you learned so much, but that's what it was for. It was a lesson. And I know that fucking sucks, but that's what it was. Okay, you guys, this was probably the longest episode ever. I'm so sorry. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for being here. Next week will be a recap. We're going to go over all of the stories from being home. Hopefully I have some good ones, but I think we'll just do like a big catch up and then that will be that. But I hope you guys have the best week ever. Thank you guys so much for being here and I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye guys.